Hey guys, it's RPG Caster. Today we'll be looking at my Tsukiyomi Oracle deck. Here to grill me with questions will be Silent Tom. Say hi.
Hey guys. Alright, I am going to try and ask some good questions because I know Shannon's been toying with this build since 3.0 came out.
Since before 3.0 came out.
Yeah, actually it was proxying it. But yeah, we'll try and get to the bottom of all the changes that he's made, all 1,000 of them. Yeah, go through the deck, man.
Starting with trigger lineup, I started with the obvious 4 heal triggers, max 4 as has been mentioned before, because they're good. Like, you can't get much better than that. 4 draw triggers mainly because I've toyed with 6 and I found that the deck tends to be rather weak defense wise when it comes to having too many draw triggers in hand. And the deck on its own can actually function without the draw function. I mean, you got the level 3 Tsukiyomi to pull out cards for you, you got the Tsukiyomi Superior Ride to save cards in hand, so I don't think 6 draws is really necessary. I'd rather run the 8 critical triggers to maximize as much damage as I can, as well as threaten with Silent Tom. Psychic Bird's obvious second function is the Soul Charge, because from 0 to 1 to 2, that only gets you 5 soul once you've hit 3, so you need an extra 1. That's what Psychic Bird's there for, I guess you could say. Moving on to the grade 1s, self-explanatory Tsukiyomi, you need it for the Superior Ride. Having 4, so max out your chances of actually hitting it with the Superior Ride, and if you don't, you most likely have it in hand, so that's always a good thing. Oracle Guardian Gemini at 4, because Silent Tom needs to hit the 16 mark. If you hit the 16 mark, that guarantees that no matter whether your opponent's Vanguard is 10k or 11k, they're gonna have to guard with at least 2 cards from hand, because Silent Tom doesn't let them use their 10k guards. 3 chocolates is standard. I tried 4 and I found that I ended up having too many and not enough to actually drop other things besides itself. So I think 3 is enough, and with the draw function, you most likely have enough cards, especially since you don't have so many draw triggers in this deck. When it comes down to the whole deck strategy, which I'll have to explain before I can justify these 2 cards, level 0, 1, and 2 ability is obviously to check the top 5 cards, see if it's a Superior Ride, and then return the cards back to the bottom of the deck. Now, the cards returned back to the bottom of the deck can actually be reorganized to your liking. So what I usually do is take the triggers, stack them together, and then put them at the bottom. This is good because you'll be cycling through 15 cards if you get from 1 to 3 using a Superior Ride of some sort, or if you have them in hand, which means that's 15 off the bottom. So if you're lucky enough to reach endgame and you have not many cards left in deck, you'll be hitting those double triggers and your opponent's most likely not going to be able to guard. And if you're smart enough with how you stack them, or you're aware of how many cards you have left in deck, you can almost predict 2 triggers coming on, so if they guard for enough to only block 1 trigger, you can guarantee the double trigger onto your Vanguard and end the game. So that's what this is here for. Its ability is when it supports, you draw 1 and put a card at the bottom of the deck. That obviously cycles the deck 1 card up, which goes towards that kind of deck function of cycling up the stacking triggers. But as well as that, I actually find this card's amazing. Despite its 5k, the 5k power does not make a difference when you stick it behind Tsukiyomi in the Vanguard, which can be an amazing thing. And the other beauty of it is, well, you're drawing before you ditch whatever card from hand. So unlike Airmo and the Seahorse, Petal Fairy, etc., rather than dropping what's from hand and possibly drawing into a worse card, you're drawing, and if the card that you got is worse than anything else in your hand, you can just put that back in the bottom of the deck. That plus the fact that you're not dropping a card to the drop zone, less risk for decking out. Kokoa, also there for that cycling function, but it's always good to have a card that can see the top. Moving on to grade 2s, again, Tsukiyomi grade 2, self-explanatory. Oracle Guardian Red Eye, mainly there as a 9k bid stick, but as well as that, if you're unlucky enough to not be able to get to 6 soul and you really need to, it's there to apply pressure, as well as if you do manage to land a hit, you soul charge 1, set you up for the requirement of 6 soul for these 2 cards' abilities. Silent Tom, again, self-explanatory. I mean, Oracles don't have that much in terms of power, but when it comes to Silent Tom, that's probably the best you're going to get when it comes to grade 2 units. I mean, a card that stops your opponent from being able to guard with grade 0 units, which is basically what most players use to guard. It's amazing, nothing short of amazing. Moving on to grade 3, 3 Tsukiyomis and 3 Amaterasus. Most people would ask me why I'm running 3 rather than 4. Now, early stages, like Tom has said, I've been playing around with this deck like crazy, and my ratios actually went from 3 to 4 to 3 to 3, 2 to 3, 2 to 4, and then dropping the Amaterasu completely and just having 4 Tsukiyomis. Now, having 4 Tsukiyomis is good, but they tend to come to hand a lot, and when you don't have 1, 2, and 0 underneath the soul, they can be a pretty weak vanguard or rearguard and not really much use. Especially in the case when I was only running Tsukiyomi as my soul grade 3, I found that the deck was completely reliant on being able to get that combo. If I didn't, I was stuck on the grade 9 unit. It was really, really hard to get up to 6 soul to force a piece I was missing in. And you know, being stuck with an upgrade 3s that you don't really want or can't really function as it's supposed to is always a bad thing. So Amaterasu, extremely good card as a backup vanguard. No doubt that's the reason why it's still considered one of the more valuable cards out there. I mean, Soul Charge 1 also serves the function of powering up for these 2 abilities, and the ability to check the top, that can't be considered a bad thing, and I mean, come on, also contributes to the cycling of the deck, bringing the stack higher. Besides that, it just acts as an alternate vanguard in case you're unable to bring this out, and if you get lucky, you might Soul Charge a piece you're missing, be able to play this on top next turn.
Have you tried running 4 Blue Eye and no Cocoa?
I have tried running 4 Blue Eye. I mean, the card itself is really good, but I just find that the 5k, as a principle of deck building, when I find a grade 1 unit that has a 5k power, I would not usually run it unless its ability is phenomenal. And even in that case, I'd limit to 2. Reason being, 5k not really good behind most things. I mean, in this deck it only really gets Tsukiyomi up to 16, gets Amaterasu up to 15, but to the rest it doesn't even break 15k. I'm not running Wise Man, as you can see, because I need the space for Red Eye Soul Charge. So that 5k doesn't really help. Whereas the 6k can get both Tsukiyomi grade 2 and Red Eye up to 15, get Amaterasu up to 16, and you can hit weaker units with a Tsukiyomi at 17.
Have you considered using other grade 3s apart from Amaterasu? Because Apollon would serve as a decent vanguard, temporary vanguard, but also as a fairly decent rearguard. Yes. But have you tested it with any other? I
have tried the others. I honestly did not touch Sakuya because I didn't see it having much point in this deck, given the only on-entry skill that I got is, what, Cocoa? Looking at Apollon, yes, I have thought about it, but in terms of practicality for this deck, 1, Amaterasu wins in the fact that it can Soul Charge, because that helps Tsukiyomi late game as well as Blue Eyes at that current point in time, and as well as that, Amaterasu will sometimes hit into your grade 2 or 1 that you missed from the cycle. Count 2, it can check the top, so you can predict your triggers, which is always a good thing, or you can psych your opponent out. If you have a good card on top that you need in your hand, you can use a Psychic Bird to grab it out, you know. Whereas Apollon not only shares Counterblast with Tsukiyomi, but I just find it has less control than Amaterasu does over the deck. And that whole cycling and controlling of what's in the deck is really the main focus of the decks.
What are your good matchups? What are your bad matchups?
Paladins really hits hard early game, which kind of hits to a weak point of this deck, where this deck will need to build up around grade 3 and then start to speed its game up, whereas Paladins, most Paladin players will drop all their units early game and swing really fast. Same thing with Novas, really. A lot of time I find myself kind of sniping the opponent's rear guards when I am using this deck against Paladins, because there are a lot of pesky rear guards in that deck. Just to go through a few, there's Baramides. Don't want that sticking on the field. Not only is it boosting itself by being a second grade 3 on the field, but it's really annoying. You've got Gordons, which stop Silent Tom's advantage, basically. and a lot of other pesky rear guards. But yeah, really, Paladin matchup isn't too hard, but it requires me to think early game a lot. I would have to block earlier damage to stop myself from reaching that kind of 4 or 5 damage point before hitting grade 3. Kagura is probably one of the toughest matchups for this deck. I can see you smiling. Well, Kagura, this deck is obviously set up. You're required to set up Toms with one of these 2s behind it. You're required to set up Blue Eyes, so especially with Kagura, they can snipe out anything important. If there's a pesky Tom they don't want to attack it, go for the Tom. If there's a Gemini that's laying on the field waiting for a Tom to be placed in front of it, go for the Gemini. If Blue Eyes is starting to get annoying with its hand recycling, they go for the Blue Eyes. So with Kagura, it's really a matter of knowing how much your opponent can do to your field and maybe not relying too much on keeping that perfect field, which is more of what I would do if I was matching up against something that wouldn't be able to take the back row. Because in this deck, the back row is very important, which is why my grade 1 lineup is a lot bigger than my grade 2 or 3 compared to other decks.
Sure.
Would you recommend Oracles for a new player?
Maybe not this deck build, because there is a lot to think about when it comes to Tsukiyomi Oracles.
A lot of cash to spend.
A lot of cash to spend as well. We don't want the new players, well, we do want the new players to buy 6 boxes, but I don't think the new players would be willing to buy 6, 7 boxes or something just to build this deck, you know. But if a new player did want to play Oracles, I would recommend the Sakuya build only because it's a lot easier to understand. Whereas when you're looking at the Amaterasu and the Tsukiyomi, there's a lot to think about in and out of game.
Alright. So do you think this is the final version of this build? Is this done? Are you going to move on to something else, or is there still room to move?
Look, there's always room for improvement in a deck. As it is right now, until set 4.0 comes out, I think this deck is set. Like,
I think
there'll be
nothing's going to change in 4.0 for Oracle, so you're probably this deck's going to get a bit of dust on it, I think.
Yeah, I'll probably be like picking up some new clans and whatever, but yeah.
Alright guys, well you've seen this Oracle deck. Once again, if you've got any other decks that you think are pretty good, post a video response. Even if you've just got any questions, just post them down below. And we'll try and get back to you.
Yep. So until next time, see you guys later.